just learned that Hulk Hogan passed away. I mean, when you heard the news, what was your first thought?
Well, it was almost shock because he was one of those guys who was larger than life. You just assumed, and he didn't appear to age. So you never thought that the last time you saw Hulk Hogan would be the final time you saw Hulk Hogan.
They told us Hulk Hogan was indestructible, the legend built in red and yellow, the man whose theme music once sent chills through sold-out arenas and backyard birthday parties alike. That illusion was so tightly wound, so fiercely guarded, that when word first broke of Hogan's sudden collapse at his Florida home, the shock was immediate, like someone had punched a hole through the heart of pop culture itself. Reports poured in, frantic and breathless, confirming that paramedics had worked on the icon for precious minutes before the inevitable happened in a Clearwater ER. Just like that, the immortal Hulk Hogan, born Terry Bollea, was gone at 71, leaving behind a wake of confusion, sorrow, and a gnawing sense of unfinished business.
Well, let's switch gears just a bit and talk about another celebrity, Hulk Hogan, who suddenly passed away from a sudden heart attack last week. He was 71. Today, flags are flying at half-staff in the state of Florida in his honor.
That's right. The pro wrestling star dealt with plenty of health issues late in life. On a podcast in 2024, he claimed to have had 25 surgeries in the last...
As details trickled out, the wrestling world didn't just mourn, they braced for impact. For decades, Hogan's carefully manufactured aura of the all-American hero insulated him from the real story. Mainstream outlets lined up their tributes and greatest moments reels, while his family and inner circle issued statements that strained for warmth and nostalgia. But in hushed corners, a different conversation was building, picking up the moment Hogan's pulse stopped. Because Hulkamania wasn't just a brand, it was a fortress, a PR castle so towering it kept the more troubling truths walled off for years. It shielded Terry Bollea not just from critics and rivals, but from a reckoning with the trail of pain, fractured friendships, and outright betrayal he left behind in locker rooms and boardrooms. Now, with the ultimate curtain call, we can finally ask, how many dreams did that fortress swallow whole? How many lives, how many actual human beings were quietly trampled so Hulk could stay on top? We have to remember, this is an industry built on secrets and spectacle. There are kayfabe storylines, sure, but behind the scenes, that's where the real carnage accumulates. Wrestlers are talking now more openly than ever about what they endured under Hogan's shadow. The word toxic barely covers it. As one old school veteran, still nervous enough to request anonymity even now, told us, nobody really wanted to cross him. Not if he wanted a job next week. Another, who'd long retired, put it more bluntly. He buried people, man. It wasn't just politics, it was personal. He made sure some of us never even got in the game. We're hearing these voices at last, and it's clear. The house that Hulk built was more dungeon than Disneyland. The sudden removal of the hero mask hasn't just exposed Hogan, it's exposed the business itself, revealing a culture of enabling, fear, and backroom maneuvering that's been swept under the ring apron for decades.
But a lot of people need to realize that you inherit things from your environment. And where I grew up was South Tampa, Port Tampa, and it was a really rough neighborhood, very low income, and all my friends, we greeted each other saying that word. We teased each other with that word. The word was just thrown around like it was nothing.
In the hours after his passing, social media became a bizarre battleground. WWE's official line called him one of pop culture's most recognizable figures and offered condolences to family, fans, and friends. Meanwhile, a Florida school board chair was raked over the coals for admitting online, good, one less MAGA in the world. Even actor Michael Rappaport found himself scrambling after he posted a heartfelt video tribute, only to get roasted for apparently not knowing about Hogan's infamous racist remarks. He posted multiple follow-ups, scrambling to explain, I did not know about the N-word tape until after I posted it. If I knew that at the time, I wouldn't have done the video, or my video would have been a lot different. It wasn't just the wrestling insiders talking. The cracks in Hogan's image, racism, family breakdowns, political feuds were suddenly unavoidable, splashed across timelines, podcasts, and even school board meeting. But for those who actually worked with Hogan, the sense of relief was almost palpable. Now, finally, there was space to say what so many had whispered for years, that Hulk's real superpower wasn't a leg drop, but a ruthless knack for self-preservation at others' expense. The man who preached loyalty and brotherhood in the ring was, by many accounts, a master manipulator when the cameras were off. We've all heard about the infamous golden era of wrestling, with Hogan as its poster boy, blockbuster paydays, crossover stardom, even a reality show. But for every superstar spotlight, there was another talent buried in the undercard, their push quietly evaporating. The phrase buried talent isn't just wrestling lingo. In Hogan's orbit, it was a career-ending fate.
But for me, who cares, what the press says or what people think, as long as you're being the best person you can. But my priorities, have changed so much because these kids are the most important thing.
So what really happened behind those velvet curtains? We're not just talking about rivalries over who gets to main event WrestleMania. There are news stories, raw, sometimes emotional, about the pain left behind. We've heard about Hogan's turbulent family life, the divorce that turned into a public circus, the years-long estrangement from his daughter Brooke. Sources close to the family say Hogan spent his last weeks trying to heal old wounds, settling scores, and reaching out to those he'd cut off. But some gaps were too wide to bridge. His own son-in-law told media outlets, bluntly, that Hogan showed no interest in ever meeting Brooke's twins. The official narrative says he was a family man. The lived reality, it seems, was much more complicated, layered with silence and heartbreak. Even at the end, the fortress was up.
Something foul, amiss. I have questions as to why the occupational therapist was at the home on the day of Hulk Hogan, and if he was interviewed and the police have that body camera footage, why the family has not seen the footage yet.
And yet, it wasn't just family that Hogan walled himself off from. The wrestling industry itself is now coming to terms with something that had long been rumored but rarely discussed in public: the existence of a secret do not push list. For years, the whispers have swirled around locker rooms and after parties, with veterans and newcomers alike insisting there was a blacklist, an unofficial roster of names that were never allowed to rise too far, too fast. Some say this was an open secret, but the name at the top, controlling access, was always the same: Hogan. We're told if Hulk didn't like you, if you didn't play his game, you were done. Your run was over before it even started. Now, in the silence left behind by his passing, former insiders are finally connecting the dots. People are talking now, says one ex-road agent who watched careers flame out for no apparent reason. They're sharing names, stories, actual conversations. They're not afraid anymore. If this blacklist really existed, and all signs point to it being much more than a ghost story, then the ramifications stretch far beyond bruised egos and missed paydays. We're talking about dreams ground into dust, whole families built on the hope that dad or mom might make it big, only to have the doors slammed shut before the ink dried on their first contract. It's not just black wrestlers, though the pattern is glaring there. Countless careers, many never even getting a tryout, suddenly stalling in mysterious ways. Was this systemic racism, personal vendetta, or just good old-fashioned paranoia from a superstar afraid to share his spotlight? That's the million-dollar question. No wonder there's a sense of catharsis, even liberation, as old wounds are finally aired out in the open.
And honestly, that makes sense because we in the public had no idea that was going on. But again, what is happening right now? I will tell you, a lot of weird stuff.
And just as we begin to process this, a fresh wave of speculation hits. Who else was on that list? Which legends never became legends because they were quietly blackballed? Which would be stars whose names we might never know, watched their big break vanish after one backstage encounter with Hogan or his allies? We're told that with each passing hour, more names are surfacing. Wrestlers from the 80s, the 90s, even the ruthless aggression era, who insist they were iced out without explanation. The pattern once invisible is suddenly glaring. Was it always personal? Or was Hogan simply the gatekeeper for a much larger system? Was he protecting his own spot? Or did he have a bigger agenda? Of course, the official mouthpieces, WWE, the family, the most loyal old-timers, are either denying or playing dumb. We never saw a list, they say. We never heard anything like that. But the circumstantial evidence is stacking up fast. When the same names keep cropping up in story after story, when so many describe the same moments of hope, followed by the same cold shoulder from management, it's hard not to draw your own conclusion. Even now, there are meetings, group chats, podcast segments, all buzzing with the question, is this the beginning of the wrestling world's own Me Too moment? Are we finally about to see what Hulkamania cost? Who paid the price for all those sold-out arenas, all that global fame?
My dad was never alone. He was always with someone. And most of those people I did not like, and I did not get good energy from, and I didn't want to be around. And he kind of gave me the sentiment of like, well, I guess you have to live your life and I have to live mine. And that was kind of how it was left. And it was almost like, you know, I love you, you love me. We have different beliefs and different, opinions on things, but like, we're good. Me and my dad are good.
No one's saying Hogan didn't help make wrestling what it is. His run transformed a niche business into a global circus, and his brand was as big as McDonald's for a time. But that's exactly what made him so powerful. The industry couldn't afford to cross him, even when he crossed the line, over and over again. Racist remarks, toxic manipulation, political grandstanding, the kind of divisive alliances that got him booed off stages in LA and cheered in Texas just weeks later. None of it mattered while he was still the face of the business. Now, with his absence, a silence has fallen over the fortress, and in that silence, we're finally hearing the voices that were drowned out for so long. The door is wide open, and people are finally ready to talk. Some of what's coming out is shocking, but some of it feels depressingly familiar. a reflection not just of Hogan, but of an entire system that enabled him. Even the family drama is being picked over in new ways. Why did Hogan's daughter ask to be removed from his will? Why did his first ex-wife, Linda, admit in her tribute that it hurt when he cheated? I never got over him. The once private wounds are now public, another chapter in the long saga of how far one man went to keep himself at the top and how many were left picking up the pieces.
Their golden goose is gone. I relied on my father for nothing financially. I have my own job. My husband has a job. We do not have any money coming in from my father since I was 18 years old. And everybody else relied on him for a paycheck. And now that golden goose is gone. So I don't know if I'm their emotional,
And that's just scratching the surface. As one former wrestler put it, the business is never really about the moves. It's about the moves you never get to make. The fortress of Hulkamania has finally crumbled, and what's spilling out is darker, stranger, and more consequential than anyone on the outside ever imagined. The fallout from the blacklist isn't just about the names we know, but about the ones we never got to cheer for at all. And the question hanging over everything is simple. Now that the man is gone, who's left to protect the secrets? There's something almost Shakespearean about the tragedy that unfolded between Hulk Hogan and his own daughter, a relationship poisoned by secrets, pride, and the shifting alliances of those circling the family in Hogan's final years. We saw Brooke Hogan stand by her father through his worst scandals, the lawsuit spectacle, the reality show train wreck, even those infamous tapes that gutted his reputation and sent sponsors sprinting for the exits. But loyalty, it seems, was a one-way street. In the coldest twist of all, Brooke found herself erased from the will, written out like an inconvenient subplot just when the world expected some Hollywood-style redemption. She wasn't just snubbed at the reading of her father's last wishes. Insiders say she was quietly cut off financially, left to pick up the emotional and literal bill for decades of dysfunction. And with each new headline, it became harder to ignore the figure lurking at the center of this family unraveling, Sky Daly, Hogan's third and final wife, whose influence over the ailing legend only seemed to grow as his health faded.
Is whoever is spinning this negative narrative about me, trying to get ahead or discredit me, or whatever they're trying to do. What I've been hearing it's so false, it's laughable.
Brooke's statements in the aftermath weren't the slick sound bites of a showbiz veteran. They were raw, wounded, and heartbreakingly transparent. She posted online that when her father left this earth, it felt like part of my spirit left with him. But those closest to the family tell a much darker story. According to Brooke's husband, Steven, Alexi attempted to reconnect with Hogan in his last year were met with no interest. Not even the birth of Brooke's twins could soften Hogan's resolve. He refused to meet his own grandkids despite Brooke's repeated efforts. She was there for every surgery leading up to the last 2 years, Alexi explained to reporters, painting a picture of a daughter who kept coming back, only to find the door locked from the inside. The question no one can answer is whether this cold shoulder was Hogan's choice, or if Sky, ever the gatekeeper, steered him away from the old ties that might disrupt her new grip on the estate.
We've been through a lot. I've forgiven a lot. I've been by his side through everything. Even if I haven't gotten the whole truth, even if I have been a little bit misled, I have.
We've seen it before in celebrity circles, but the Hogan saga feels particularly brutal. Brooke didn't just lose her father, she lost her place in the empire she helped defend. There's mounting chatter that Hogan, already weakened by illness, leaned heavily on Sky in those crucial final months. Family insiders whisper about subtle manipulations and deliberate estrangement, painting Sky as the ultimate power broker. With Linda and Jennifer, wives 1 and 2, left on the outside looking in, Sky seems to have succeeded where others failed, securing her position at the center of the Hogan legacy while freezing out rivals and stepchildren alike. It's classic tabloid material, but the stakes here are personal, dreams dashed, bonds severed, and a daughter left to mourn what might have been. We can't talk about Hogan's final act without mentioning the way he tried, in his own way, to patch up old wounds. Sources close to the family describe a man obsessed with settling scores and leaving nothing unsaid. A longtime friend told media that Hogan knew his health was declining, and that in his last weeks he was on oxygen, losing weight and moving with the haunted urgency of someone trying to put his house in order before the curtain fell. But was it too little too late? Those bedside conversations, the late-night phone calls, the whispered apologies have already taken on the quality of urban legend. Some insiders claim that Hogan did confess to certain backstabbing tactics, admitting that he'd played politics, manipulated outcomes, even sabotaged fellow wrestlers' careers to keep himself in the main event. Did he finally acknowledge the do not push list so many had feared and resented? Did he express regret for pushing his family to the brink? sacrificing real relationships for television-friendly storylines and business deals?
If you want to give it a quick Google, anybody can find out the hurt that has happened to me throughout the years. And I've forgiven, and I've always put my dad first. That's my daddy. People know, as a woman, a father-daughter bond is so strong, even more so than a mother-daughter bond, you know? And I love my mom, but my dad and I were very close.
The public will probably never get the full transcript of Hogan's last words, but there are hints that his self-image as a hero crumbled at the finish line. If some in the industry are to be believed, he spoke of mistakes and lost chances, and acknowledged the high price paid for fame, his own and that of those who never got their shot. Was this remorse, or just another layer of self-preservation, hoping for a last-minute rewrite of the narrative? Even his most loyal friends can't agree. What they do agree on is that Hogan's final weeks were marked by frantic activity, as if he knew time was running out to make things right, or at least to get his side of the story down before the floodgates opened. As all this played out in private, the public mourning took on a surreal tone. WWE aired glowing tributes, queuing up highlight reels of leg drops and flexing biceps, while talk radio and wrestling podcasts broke down the scandals with forensic obsession. Hogan's estranged family members, from Linda to Brooke, released their own statements, sometimes warm, sometimes laced with unresolved pain. "It's very sad. I love you, Hulkster. You are my man, the only man for me. R.I.P." Linda wrote, even as she admitted, "I never got over him." The contrast couldn't have been starker. On one side, the nostalgia machine cranking out memories of an all-American hero. On the other, the raw, unscripted fallout from a man who left too many questions and too many lives unanswered.
To get to the funeral, you have to start at the beginning. You know, I'm embarrassed that it's even come to this. You know, I have a life, I have 2 kids, I have a job, I have a business. I have been trying to live quietly and peacefully. And the only reason my face is on TV right now is because I have had to constantly.
If there's a single through line to the Hogan saga, it's that his shadow falls far beyond the family drama and locker room politics. Hogan didn't just dominate wrestling, he defined it for a generation. That's what makes these revelations about manipulation, racism, and calculated cruelty so devastating. It wasn't just one man playing dirty, it was the standard bearer for an entire industry, modeling the kind of behavior that set the tone for everyone who followed. Now, as we listen to wrestlers finally speaking up, recounting the ways their dreams were quietly dashed or publicly crushed, we have to wonder how many more stories like this are waiting to come out. When the biggest icon sets the rules, who dares to break them?
I know this is a really difficult time for you for many reasons, and I'm really sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. My heart is racing out of my chest right now, and I'm feeling a plethora of emotion. So I'm going to try to get through this as professionally as.
The business model that kept Hulkamania on top was always about control. Control of the spotlight, control of the narrative, and most ruthlessly, control of opportunity. That same machinery didn't just silence dissenters, it actively punished them. A former WCW booker once hinted that careers vanished overnight and everyone knew why, but nobody said the name. Others in the WWE have spoken out years later about the unspoken rule. Cross the Hulkster, and you disappear from TV, from merchandise, from the conversation. The fortress Hogan built to protect his own legend didn't just keep out critics, it smothered potential legends before they could rise. That's the real cost of the myth, and it's one we're only beginning to count.
Do you have any personal preference who ethnically your daughter dates?
No, I don't. Actually, the guy my daughter was dating, I liked him a lot. I've known him for quite a while. And I was very mad at a personal situation that happened with my daughter.
Are you a racist?
No, I'm not. I'm not a racist. I never should have said what I said. It was wrong. I'm embarrassed.
We should be honest, wrestling has always trafficked in secrets and spectacle. For every bright Technicolor storyline, there's a darker current, one that's only now starting to break the surface. Hogan's legacy may be the first to unravel this publicly, but insiders are already wondering who's next. If the biggest, most beloved star was hiding so much behind the bandana and the muscle, what else is waiting to spill out? The culture of silence, the old boys network, the blacklist, the quiet payoffs, and vanished pushes. These aren't just Hogan problems, they're industry problems. And with the floodgates open, we're seeing the beginnings of something bigger, a reckoning that could sweep through every level of the wrestling world.
I was at the lowest point of my life. My personal life was destroyed. I was very mad at my daughter. I was upset over a situation that happened between her and her boyfriend, and I had no idea I was being taped. I was to the point where I wanted myself. I'm sad.
Some say Hogan's passing will be the final chapter, a chance to move on, let the industry heal, and celebrate the good times. But as more details emerge, it's clear that this isn't closure. It's just the start of a much messier, much more honest conversation about how power works, how legends are built, and how the pursuit of fame can turn even family into collateral damage. The most haunting detail might be that for all the millions earned and the decades of adulation, Hogan finished his life surrounded by walls of his own making, with only a select few granted access to the fortress in his last hours.
Out of everything that I've been through, this one hit me probably the hardest, and that's a heck of a thing to say, because I've been through a lot of crazy stuff.
Now, the question hanging over everything isn't just about Hogan. It's about all of us who bought into the show, who cheered the hero and booed the villain, who believed the myth because it was easier than facing the ugly reality. If wrestling's biggest star could fall so far, who's left to tell the truth? Who will pull back the curtain on the industry's deepest secrets? We want to know what you think. Did Hogan's final confessions redeem him, or damn him even more? And if the so-called immortal could be exposed, what does that mean for everyone else still hiding behind the spotlight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was this just one man's fall, or is this the beginning of pro wrestling's biggest reckoning yet? Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and remember, not all legends wear capes. Some just hide behind a mustache and a bandana.